greenhouse gas emission, meaning that we start cutting all our activities from what it used to be. Maybe I am used to generator, I've turned it to solar PV. Maybe my vehicle runs on gasoline, I've changed it to hydrogen. Maybe I use electric cars. Now, maybe conversion of my vehicle to CNG, compressed natural gas. So these are the ones that reduce the carbon emission and is on the line towards net zero emission. And that's exactly what we're looking at, that between now and 2060, what is our route? I won't say roadmap. I will call it route map to get into that, meaning that along that line, there are a lot of things that we must consider, and government is number one. We can't do anything without government. I keep saying to my colleague, look at when government says something, the whole country shivered. Meaning that if government interest is not brought to bear, invariably, whatever we're going to do will just be futile. And I'm happy with the question of my moderator. What do we do to enhance the interest of government? It's a whole lot of stories, because I'm prepared here not to speak as a politician, not to speak as, I've come here as a panelist and I've tailored my reasoning towards net zero water. If not, I will blow beyond the mandates given to me. But that's why I'm trying all my best to bring us back to the net zero water. So how do we garner the interest? I'll start an example. I invited the director here. He came in the morning. He is the director of climate change. He saw the whole thing. He was so impressed, but was not patient enough to wait till the session that is supposed to take the message back to the PAMSEC. So I think Green Building Society or Council has a lot of work to do, by making sure that whatever the outcome of this is taken to the department or the Ministry of Water Resources. I can help you facilitate that, because that's what we do in our association, in our organization. I facilitate investment opportunity. I facilitate aspect of meeting with the government. We can do that. And we can start asking them if they don't have a roadmap, because we can't do it in isolation. Private sector can't do it. NGO can't do it. All these things must get to the government, and government must give us the roadmap, because if they don't give us the roadmap, we'll just be wasting the time. So invariably, we need to lobby around them. We need to show them the interest. You know the interest. We can talk about that. But one of the interests is traveling. We need to expose them to the developed world. We need to make comparison. We need to benchmark their activities, and we need to speak out. We need to let the world know what exactly is happening. Let me say to you, if I ask you to mention one or two ministries that is well known in Nigeria today, you mention Ministry of Works and Housing, you mention Ministry of Agriculture, you mention Ministry of Trade and Investment, you mention Ministry of Health, and Ministry of Education. If you mention Ministry of Water Resources, have you ever heard of any infractions in that ministry in the past 8 years of Buhari? Can you tell me that there were no infractions? Well, because it's quiet, and sometimes water is quiet. But don't be surprised that sometimes water is turbulent. So we have to look at the nature, the turbulent nature of water to get into this. And we need to look at it as holistic. All the other ministries I've mentioned, they all drive water courses. You can't talk about buildings without water. You can't talk about construction without water. You can't talk about your livelihood without water. But how do you reach the net zero? How do you make sure that the source of that water? Let me say to you, I'm a Yoruba man. And there's an adage in our village that says, Omi o lapa, omi o lese, but omi man gbenyan. Reason mean that, or the meaning is this: the water you are seeing cannot move by itself. The water you are seeing cannot move, the footprint of that water is not done by water. It's done by human being. So invariably, for that water to move from underground, you need an engine. And for that engine to power the water up to your tank, you need what? Power. And for that power to work, you need what? A fuel. And either fuel, or let me say source like solar. You don't need fuel, you need solar sometimes to do that. So when you need fuel, you need green fuel. So for you to get to the net zero, then you must look at the source of energy that powers that water to get to the right thing and for its usage. And by the time you are recirculating it, like Doctor said, you make sure that, yes, it's going through that process. But mind you, there are so many things that we cannot pick, like copywriting from the developed world. All we need to do is adapt in our system. The developed world has decentralized water system. From one point, it goes to everywhere. We have decentralized water system. We all have our own water board in our own houses. If I mention to you, how many of you has borehole in your own house? Or your source of water, okay, let me put it this way. How many of you your source of water is government? No, please raise up your hand. Your source of water is government. One? Okay, one person. How many of you source of water is from underground, either well or groundwater? So, we only have one over maybe like 20 of us. So you can see what I'm saying. And all of us, we are emitting, because before you to fetch, you must put on the gen. The carbon is being released into the air. And we want to reach the net zero of that source of water, because you cannot do anything without pumping it. And this is the only one, the only person that is doing it. Now we have to look at the source from the government, whether it's being pumped by solar. I know of Gurara Dam. Gurara is powered by solar. So if it's getting a source of water from Gurara Dam, that means clean water, net zero water instance. But every one of us here, how do we think that, yes, we can retrofit our system? Money is number one. And mind you, the policy of the government, I'm happy with the high increase in fuel price now. Many of us will not be able to pump water very soon. Because now you start looking for alternative that, okay, I don't want this dirty fuel. Because to us, they are green experts. The fuel is dirty to us. How I wish I have my way, I'll buy an electric car. I'm not using fuel at all. Now, my whole house is powered by solar. I don't want fuel too. If I have an electric car, my whole building, or I can have a gas that can definitely be free of carbon. So those are the things. So before I go further, let me just allow.
Thank you so very much. Thank you so very much, Prof. Our audience that is enjoying government water. Alaji, please, I want to come back to you after taking him, because I want him to, he spoke about framework that he probably will want to assist the Green Building Council to facilitate maybe engagement with the Ministry of Water Resources. Now, more like a question to you, sir, in terms of water extraction, what policy does your association conform to? I know there is policy in Lagos State that guides water extraction, maybe for industrial use and not domestic use. But as an association, I want to come back to you to talk about policy that guides water extraction for individual and domestic bowl, which I think should be domiciled with Ministry of Water Resources. And just in the room, do we have anybody from Water Resources or the Ministry of the Environment? Okay, nobody. Okay, thank you. So I'll come back to you, sir. To Dr. Iluwole. Now, I like the example that you've given in terms of educating your support staff to manage water. And I think this should actually go a long way. I mean, beyond us educating our immediate environment, what do you think about the level of awareness generally at macro and macro level from government? Then, do you think that there is adequate infrastructure to promote integrated water management system? That is the reuse of water, you mentioned that. So now, let's look at city scale level, because that's actually how we can achieve net zero. Do you think we have that level of awareness and infrastructure to actually promote that?
For now, I don't think we have the awareness because, like my senior colleague said, because we don't have the problem yet. That's why we don't feel that we have to look into that. But at city scale, the earlier we realized that not everybody can drill borehole, the better for us. I'll give an example. In the past, I'm sure you will bear me witness, in Abuja here, in some places, if you drill your borehole to maybe 60 to 70 meters, you tap water. You don't have problem. Now, people drill 100, 150, in fact, 200 meters without getting water. And what that means is the aquifer, the near surface aquifer has been exhausted, and we are going deep. And the deeper we go, the lower the volume of water we get because of the kind of environment we have. That is Abuja as an example. Now, on a city scale, we have developers, we have all manner of people who have plans. The best is to have at least municipal water management. You want to build an estate, the first thing you do is to know the environment. What are the sources of water that can be harnessed in that environment, and you support that with the groundwater that can serve the whole community, instead of everybody punching the ground and tapping. Because I don't know whether anybody has experienced that before. If you drill your borehole and maybe after some time you have people around you drilling boreholes too, which now are deeper than yours, you realize that you lose your water, because water will find its way. It's the ones that are deeper. If you are tapping the same aquifer, you just wake up one day and see that your well is dry. And these are the things we are talking about. But if it's a municipal kind of management, before any development, there is a massive investigation to know where you have the groundwater zones. Maybe it's a regional fracture that can sustain the kind of infrastructure or the kind of housing that you plan in your estate. Then you dedicate that to water development rather than building houses where you are supposed to drill boreholes. So these are some of the things that I think we should consider. And government also should be aware that they have a whole lot of responsibility. Yes, Nigerians are resilient. With 617 yesterday, I'm sure people who came here would have bought that fuel. Nobody is complaining. And that's why the government, they trample upon that. They use that against us, rather than see us as citizens who are very kind. Elsewhere, you won't try this. Or because they know we are resilient, they throw things at us, we swallow it. You don't have water. Government is not providing water. You've provided it yourself. So you don't have to care. But the earlier the government realizes, the better for us. And the infrastructure for alternative sources of water, these are not rocket science infrastructure. They are not. And if government is even aware by summits like this, that by doing some things, we stop or we try and mitigate some effect. If you have an area of high runoff of water, you channel that water in a way that you collect it, and through hydrogeophysical or hydrogeological investigation, channel it back into the groundwater. The heart is a natural filter. You collect all that water, all the water that is coming from wherever, you have a zone for it, and you transport it back into the subsurface. It goes into the groundwater and it's, it is purified. And that stops, erosion, it stops flooding, and then it stops pollution, because, water will transport all manner of things if not, taken proper care of. Then if you build your house, like I said the other time, you harvest the rain. Your runoff will be reduced. The next neighbor does that from a building scale to a city scale. Then you won't disturb your neighbors, with the massive water that is coming from you. So it involves both individuals and the government. So the earlier we all realized, the better for us. Thank you.
Sorry, Alaji, sir. Can you speak to where your source of water? You said you currently use government water. I mean, the municipal supply. Where do you live, sir? You just want to chip some? Eh? In zone 7. Okay. All right. Who else lives in Abuja here? All right. And do you get government? Okay, you can speak, sir.
I want doctor to explain to us why, how we can meet the net zero as individuals. The scenario of your housemate, a lot of us have that issue, and also the scenario of the borehole, where we have houses with borehole. Now, I've spent money building the borehole. Now, you also said I should do something for the rain harvest. Now I'm spending so much money, and then Prof also said I should do PV. I should also do PV. I mean, where do I get all this money for? That's millions. And just because we want to achieve net zero, I mean, should we really, if it's going to cost us this much, why should we be bothered about, we have spent money by the drill borehole. Now you say the rain harvest, I should harvest it in order for me to balance what I've taken. I don't understand. Please, can you help us with that, sir?
Sorry, let me take one more comment. I want our focus to be city focus. Yes, because majority of us were individuals that are generating our water in quotes. So it's not our responsibility actually. So I want our recommendation to be what government should do, so that as he has advised us, we can take it on and he can and held us to implement it. Please, can you step in?
My name is Dimeji. I'm an architect. My company is Building Anatomy. So you can start thinking from there. I'm not going to really just focus on this. I'm going to just say things because you just said that's what government should do and the rest like that. I think we are really having issues with the advocates and advocacy and statutory organizations. Let me tell you a typical scenario. We have quite a lot of projects around the north, particularly now I'm talking about Kaduna. Like you say, everybody spends money to do boreholes and all that. I was particularly very touched with what you mentioned. Somebody comes in, permit me, I will not like to say stolen money, because there's corruption in the whole of the world, more in Africa, and specialized in Nigeria. And he builds a 6-story hotel overnight with 4 or 6 boreholes. All the water around the community houses we have, the estate we have, they all disappeared. because the money he brought in is not the money that the neighborhood people managed to do their 40 meters, 30 meters bowl that was working effectively. So what my drive is this now. We need to do more to send the information across to government and to the people that there should be control factors. I just came back from a trip and rest like that. Out there, they put up a notice 3 months about a building project as large as that coming up. It has to be that 3 months minimal. The committees will respond on all the factors and the things that is being done. I traveled, I got back, and I went back. 3 months had lapsed, they've not started that building project, and I was asking my fellow architect friend there. He said because the community said they are still doing some research work, and the developer could not start that project. These are the kind of things that happen. And I said corruption and the advocacy, nobody's following up. Why should an architect design a building that has not gone through as much as possible in the water resources ministry when you're going to be taking water out of the system? We can't achieve much talking here about net zero and rest like that if the advocates, the advocacy and corruption still thrives. Please let us focus our attention on that. A couple of more things, but these are the issues that are fundamental that we cannot really build the top if the bottom. That's why I think Prof. is not just the road. That's the way. Not only just the route to the route to the road. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much, sir. So a little about just a comment on what you said. You know, sometimes when government says we should do EIA, at the end of the EIA, when you see the adverse effect on the community, you wonder what the EIA is for. Exactly. Yes. Exactly. So I think that is a call for us as well, professionals, to follow through with governments, because it's not only EIA. We know what happens with the architectural drawing as well. So let me keep that. But I want Prof to respond to my earlier question and maybe what he has also said. Sorry, one other thing that I want to add. So in addition to the EIA, what you said was the same experience I had when I went to our UK office. When a bridge is to be constructed, for example, amongst other things, there is a lab that they will simulate it. The community will come. They will measure the noise level. They will measure the movement of the water and everything, and seek the community permission to implement it. And that's the bottom-up approach that was said in the main hall. So, I mean, we'll keep advocating in our various silos, and eventually hope it will be a city-wide accepted approach. So, Prof. Sir.
Yes, thank you, my moderator. I'll be very brief here. The association that I oversee, we have what is called Code of Conduct, supervised by SON, and then we have BSP, Best Suggested Practice, developed by our association. So we put the two together and use in construction. But the only challenge we have is the government, because everything boils to government. In different states, there are regulations, like the moderator mentioned about Lagos. We call them regulatory agencies. So Lagos started, and it has spread to another 8 states, where before you drill, you must pay drilling permits. But beyond the regulatory oversight, it is more of monetary perspective. Just pay your 100,000, you can do whatever you want. Just pay your 20,000 or pay your 30,000 for domestic, do what you want. Even in so many other places, it's not effective because government alone cannot monitor that bowl because it's not the same way like oil and gas. Oil and gas, I used to work with the petroleum industry in the 90s as a DPR officer. I was at the depot, and you have the petroleum guys, the tanker, PTD, by the IPMAN coming to load at the tarmac, and I will stay there, and I'll check their, their permit or their license before they can load. That means that it's a government establishment. And every stakeholders were coming to patronize the government. It's easy for government to override on their proceedings. Unlike borehole drilling, it is not government facility. It is private facility on the land. And the governor will tell you, the Federal Ministry of Water Resources has no power over my land. So if that person has collected CFO, you have entitlement over everything on that land. And it's by the state government, not by the federal government. So federal government cannot control you on abstraction of water as long as you have your document. So you can see the infractions between ministries. The state ministries must have regulatory agency because ministry does not have the power. The act that established the ministry does not allow them to collect money. So they must, by precedent, get a regulatory body that will do that. So the partnership between us and the ministry is holistic, is cordial. In such a way, like I have two states, like Oyo State, Ogun State, and Ondo State. They partner with the state government. They collect, and even Ekiti State, they collect, drilling permits, and they share among themselves. Certain percentage goes to the ministry, and certain percentage goes to the association. But like I mentioned, it's not for regulatory purpose. It's for monetary purpose. And I'll come to the issue on regulation, like Doctor mentioned. Not only in Abuja, sir. In other states, we measure the level of abstraction of water in different states. Because I get reports from different states on how water is going. Unfortunately, it's not known to the government because government does not care. But when it becomes an issue of earthquake, earth tremor, you see, oh, what was the cause? Oh, indiscriminate drilling. That's when they focus on drilling. But mind you, these are the things that government should look at. I read an article, like I'm becoming an hydrogen expert, and I read an article that in California, they were supposed to establish a big hydrogen plant, which raw material is water. Unfortunately, by taking note from the stakeholder, they stopped that project because California is going down on water. And you now want to establish green hydrogen plant. That's a knowledge community. We don't have knowledge community. Let me tell you something. This morning when I was listening to news, I said, what you see parade the news is distraction, politics. Nobody talks about environment. Nobody talks about future city. Nobody talks about water. Nobody talks about agric, but politics. And by the time you find it, then oil and gas, then labor union issue. Please, when you open to the page of your newspaper, you hardly read anything that's of interest. That is the way the political sector, they have tuned our reasoning in such a way that the area where you should have stayed and have your living has now been debased, and such that anything you post will be politics. That's what interests people. So until the Green Building Council, the other NGOs collaborate and push and lobby and keep talking. I'm happy we have journalists among us and keep pushing all these things. We will not stop. The moment we start keep because right now the new media has become the direction for governance in Nigeria is wrong. Twitter, Facebook, anything you want government to act on very fast, take it to Twitter or Facebook. Government will act. I think this government should not do the same thing, but they are toiling same path. Look at DSS replying somebody, which is not really too professional. Look at the issue of the president coming to the issue of a 2-year-old baby that was killed, and the president said justice must be found. It's not within the jurisdiction of the president to even make comments on that. That should be left to the law enforcement agent. So Twitter and these things, but let me say to you, until water kills 100, that's when it becomes news. If it doesn't kill 100, you remember the Queen's School in Lagos, where they had food and they had contaminations in their water. I think it became a news. But when you see issue of flooding, it becomes news. But when you see the issue of prevent water abstraction, let's not, because of the future, we will not have earthquake. We don't have it yet. Let us continue. You want us to die before the earthquake comes, or you want us to die before? There will always be a way. But what do we need to do? We need to still appreciate set of people that are organizing this kind of conference, and we must push it to the public until the government hears. We will do our own part and let every non-stakeholder do his own part. And I can say to you, we'll push the agenda of water and the net zero forward. It's achievable, but it's a long, like my other colleague said, route, and then road. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you so much. And the QC incident is really a very ugly one. That's my children's school. And they were at home for quite some times. And, you know, just you thinking, what if they were the ones? So it was really a very ugly incident. Now, that was a private initiative, and that will stem to my next question, which probably will be the rounding one. Now, I sometimes feel that government cannot do it alone. How do we incentivize private partnership such that investors are not frustrated? I mean, in Lagos, for example, I grew up to see water lines running in our drains. Our drains that have not now become our dumping, our waste bin. And this seems not to have received any attention. So I feel going the route of PPP could be helpful. Aside the senatorial project that you see on streets, how do we incentivize PPP to actually improve integrated water system towards net zero targets? Net zero water target. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I want to start from the point of view that when I opened this pamphlet, I realized you have partners. You know, these are people who hold the money, and in partnership or sponsors rather, I think you should transcend from sponsorship now to partnership, GBCN, and let them be advocates too. All these projects that they do, and even in their own practice. For example, we have the Dangote refinery now. I'm sure, yeah, there would have been a lot of EIA done for that project. But how is it quite realistic that every term on the report of the EIA is being catered for? You know, we start from there. Then this awareness must go beyond here, like Prof said. Everybody must know that we share responsibilities in ensuring that we have this net zero water. We shouldn't wait until there are disasters. We should be preventive measures rather than being reactive. And something that came to my mind was that even right from our NYSC, this awareness can. I remember when I was serving, we had different, what do they call it now, CDS groups. Maybe GBCN can partner with NYSC to start with and have this kind of group that we send this kind of awareness. That means if I serve and I'm a member of that CDS, sometimes I may find myself maybe in future, maybe I'm an engineer, in future I'm heading a board that has to do with all of these things. Then from that moment I've had the idea, and I'm also somebody who is propagating that kind of message. Then it becomes a community thing. Everybody is aware, and we have that sensitivity about these issues that we are talking about. And when these private bodies, when they want to do things, they should also be seen to be embracing this net zero kind of issue. I don't know whether Prof will have addition to.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Doc. I think for us to achieve the net zero, it's in two ways that I can just lay this way. The private sector, most of us, in quotes, go for loan. And the process of assessing such loan and grant, there's an aspect of sustainability, green bound and the rest. There's need for you to incorporate aspect of green into your proposal. As long as you don't have your proposal gearing towards that green initiative, you will not be able to assess loan. And I'm sure if that becomes a normal way for any individual to access money, I'm sure that, yes, you have opportunity for more consultants to definitely be in charge, or to really, embrace the aspect of green technology and reaching the net zero target. The second way is for individuals, and that goes to the government, regulatory oversight, regulatory power, to give that power to different individuals or governors to be educated first. They need to be educated, because if they are not educated, they won't even know what green or net zero. If you ask one or two people, governors, they don't even know what net zero is. Now, bringing green technology, green hydrogen to some states, I must say to you, even their department, they don't have department that can handle that. It's a capital-intensive, mission. But whoever you are taking, the investor you are taking that to must understand. So invariably, the advocacy is low among us. Now, the next thing is money. How do we have enough funding? Because if you look at the cost calculation on spending money, I'm sure with the rate at which we are looking at fuel going now, it's going to have an adverse effect on deforestation now. Because many people will resort to charcoal, and people looking for the means to survive, cutting down the trees. And we know that trees, the sequential method of trees is absorbed carbon. Now we are talking about net zero, and we are still cutting down trees. Now, for those who can afford, yes, they can have PV. Now, what is the percentage of people that can afford to people that do not afford? Even if you talk about rain harvesting, you need the engine to power the rain. If you power it from the government disco means, it's still going to be through bad or dirty fuel source. Even if you power with generator, of course, or you are going to use power, that's when you use human power to withdraw the water extracted. Then probably you are having nothing to do with carbon emission. Then you have done so well, because everything is natural. But when it comes to having to store water on your underground, you put surface pump. You still use generator to pump it, and you are still releasing carbon to the atmosphere. So when you look at all of this, we need enough education. Even in the cities. Because when I was coming, I asked one of my colleagues, do we have poor people in Abuja? I said, but Abuja is a city. I don't expect to have poor people in Abuja. As in, I'm not talking about individual. I'm talking about having slums where you have people that all they are living is through using charcoal and wood. And they say, yes, there are plenty of that. I say in Abuja, capital city, because we're talking about city. But mind you, we have in the developed countries, we have the farms, we have the cities. You know, people leave their residential home and travel down to the city. So that one is different because the architectural design is very, very advanced, that you want to have 25-story building, you know that your system, how water will get to that story without, even for you to maintain all those things. And that's where the regulation starts. Even in the architect, you must have it in your water plan that, okay, this is the method of us taking our water up. It must be in your design. And that's why you must go into all those regulatory routes. How do you meet with the Ministry of Water Resources? How do you get to understand even the Ministry of Energy, the source of energy that you want to use? And all of this culminates to the fact of getting to that net zero target. It's very big. It's large. It's not something that can be discussed here, but I can say to you that it's achievable only when we start gradually. But if we don't start at all, you don't even know how achievable it could be. Not starting at all, thinking that government will do it, is not possible. We must help government. Having advocates conversing against government, but I see that they are lame, and there's need for us to help them. And if we don't help them, you still find out that it is still going to be our own. You know what gives me courage? What gives me courage is I was in the US at a point to, water conference. And my colleague, who is the president of that NGWA, National Groundwater Association in the US, said, Mike, when I started complaining, he said, Mike, what's the problem? We have been into this 200 years ago, and we came out of it. And how many years is your country? 50 years. I say, yes. 50 years. Okay, you still need at least 150 times 2 for you to get there. And that's the truth. We are 50 years. They are 200 years ago. They have done it. But they are more advanced because everything they are doing is like double what we could do here. So at least it could give us 150 plus 150, making 300 years. But the issue is this. Our neighboring countries, they have their ways of doing things. But the question is, if you have been to one of those countries, are they doing something different from what we are doing? That's where we should start from. Adaptation. What are they doing different from what we are doing? I'm not talking about copywriting. Adaptation. If we still continue using that, is there incentive for us to have solar? I know if you look at REA, Renewable Energy Agency, they have a lot of projects. And when I was looking into their chart, they have powered so many houses, about 2,000 houses. I don't know if any of our houses is there. But they've powered 2,000 houses in rural communities. And my house is not there. They have given them, you talk about irrigation, they have given them solar on. And gradually, when you now look at the calculation, how much of those carbon has been gained? Then, if you are doing such project, can you calculate the number of carbon emission that will have happened, and then you have gained, and you can now have your carbon credit? So there are quite a number of things that we could do when it comes to GHG. Now meeting, and then progressing to reduction, and then meeting the net zero. It's a whole lot of task, but it's achievable. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Okay, so I would just want to summarize most of what you've said, which I believe our audience are quite appreciative of. One critical thing you mentioned is planning. The planning is part of the architect's work, but I think engaging the right project manager that knows the role of various professionals, they need to engage professionals that will possibly engage the likes of DOC to do the geophysical study, to know the impact of the water table, and then possibly how to do an integrated water management system will be key to planning, and of course working together to promote PPP. So we've come to the end of the session, but I want to give our audience, if we have any comment to make. Yeah.
Thank you very much for this privilege. Thank you, everyone. It's an eye-opening experience for me. I mean, this summit I've heard so many strange things today. I'm a privileged media practitioner. We receive a lot of reports from the fields by reporters and even some top-level editors on environment. I haven't heard anything that close to what I heard today. And this aside, I consult for a company that writes or conducts EIA. They pay me for this editorial work I do for them. But the issues here, they are not close to whatever I have been reading. Yes, quite voluminous report. And like as I have heard, it's like just telling me what I already know in that aspect. It's just making positive recommendations because they want to get contracts. That is what they do. Companies, government, GSM companies, hotels, just fulfill the law and then you get the job. They sublet jobs. I mean, it's easy. They tell themselves, go and meet that man, he would, and things like that. And I got scared when the prof said in the next 10 years we could just be using water in place of fuel. I was really scared. Doctor said, already, and it's true, there is the dog borehole beside my house like this, and then after 110 meters down, no water. Up to now, there is no water. Meanwhile, there were places that before they got to 80, they had gotten water. But some, and then the Indian company that came, the director came and said, I mean, it's not our fault. You are even lucky you saw something like water, that we've gone down 130, 150, we don't see water. We left. And these are very huge. But one of the key items I'm living here with, and I'm going to work with it, is that Doctor mentioned something about collaboration. Whether the media, the civil society, and everybody who is represented here. And that is why I'm a bit surprised. We have very limited representation at the government level in this program. This is a weak point for the, and I hope it will be corrected. Then, secondly, real estate is a very bad case already. Everywhere people have boreholes and things like that. Now, if you are providing for yourself, there is no any other option, any other way to go. It's danger that we have been living on. In fact, we've been living on what they call a keg of burnt powder. It could just explode. Ecological, environmental problems. Meanwhile, Nigeria is signatory to so many international conventions, but you don't see anybody implementing this. And I actually wanted to ask Prof, do we have a water policy in Nigeria? I do not know, because the way our government has been going over the years, it does not appear as if we have even one document. I know the kind of work you have been doing. I have attended your programs, how much you try to let these people know. I've read reports, how all your members are bringing reports to you, but I don't know the kind of government that we have. Do we really have a document like that? Have you cited it, sir?
Sorry, before you respond, sir, I want to take the second comment. So if there are overlaps, you can just take them all together.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, sir. My name is Victor Ayo. I'm a graduate engineer of agricultural and environmental engineering, but major in environmental engineering. So I'll just be commenting on two basics about which I'll be highlighting on the educating part. Something that was very practical, which you did with your domestic staff, is something that that caught my attention. And if it was something that was practiced by families, I'm so sure there would be a cut down to water wastage and all. So you talked about involving probably core members, because actually I'm presently a core member, And I know how much time we get to sit down during CDS and probably just to sign attendance and just just to go back home as a free day. But looking at the fact that there's a gap as regards educating people towards water usage, how the sources of water and how they tend to get water. I'm so sure, if there was anything that I know that the Green Building Council of Nigeria should do is, pouring a lot of efforts into educating people. It's quite pathetic that during political seasons, we get to see how much energy are being put into campaigns. We get to see how much energy are being put into how people get to know who and who to vote for. If such energy are being transferred to life issues like this, because trust me, issues like this are dealing with life and death, trust me. If such energy have been transferred, I'm so sure there will be a lot of awareness as regards what to do. So down to the professor, as regards synergy and regularization, it brings me back to most of the things we talked about during the sessions. He talks about synergy between professional bodies, in the sense that I'm so sure most of the professional bodies act as regularization bodies to the practices that are being done in those professional bodies. I'm so sure if those professional bodies are keen on what and how to regularize, or should I say proper follow-up are being done during the course of work, I'm so sure most of these companies will be able to follow up, obey what they are supposed to do as regards, doing the right thing. So those are major things I'll just comment about, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
So thank you very much. Those were quite encouraging as well. So, Prof, you can attend to the question, then we'll come back to the doc for his own question.
Okay, the question is straightforward. Yes, there is water policy of 2016. There is another reviewed water policy, I think, of 2020. So we have water policy of 2016. If you Google, you should be able to find it in the Federal Ministry of Water Resources water policy. Now, but policy is not enough. Implementation. Then again, the policy should be reviewed every other 5 years. Reason being that at the time we talk about that policy, there was nothing like hydrogen energy that uses water in such a way that you can, prevent people that wants to abstract water, like it happened in California. So invariably, new things will keep coming. There's nothing like water from the air, because right now you have method of capturing water from the air. So our policy does not reflect that, because we're not looking into technology. Nobody, for example, if I ask you, is there anyone that is into pump manufacturing, not supply or putting your name, manufacturing in Nigeria? No. Hand pump? No. Even making of rigs? No, because all the components of rigs, you have to import everything and join them together to make smaller rigs or bigger rigs. Compressor, no single individual makes that. Whereas in India, you have welders, turners that have turned to rig manufacturer, and they have populated our country with their rigs, with their product. And today, they are richer than you can ever imagine. But they started as turner. So that's where the issue of science technology is involved for us to improve our activities and improve our policy. There must be synergy between different, ministries. And like the last speaker said, you need more. Those politicians, among which I'm one, we put energy and resources into canvassing for vote. But when it comes to issue on water, then the NGOs should look for how they can get resources mobilized, and then big organizations like Green Building come together and push for what we know about net zero. Because if you go outside there and ask any of those participants, what is net zero? I'm sure a lot of people don't even know what net zero is. So, thank you.
Okay. So, I'm sure many of us know what net zero is, but net zero is both your... Oh, okay, the outside... Oh, okay. Thank you, sir. I see. Okay. Okay. Yeah, thank you. Of the audience here. Thank you so very much, sir.
I think his was just comment. I don't think, did you ask any question? He just emphasized what I said. But there is a joke of 1 minute, is he a commissioner of ICT in a state, a commissioner of science and technology, where some people went to his office to tell him why they should store data in the cloud. He listened with rapt attention. And after the whole thing, he hacked them that you people just kept saying cloud, cloud. I wonder what happens when there is rain. So he apparently didn't even have an idea of what they came to speak to him about. He just had cloud. And the thing that came to his mind was that when rain falls, what happens to the data that you asked us to? Yeah, that's an icebreaker anyway. It starts from here, like I've just been saying. All of us have been informed. I gave an example of my help. It was easy for me. I've been shouting, look, you are wasting water. Water, is it not just water? But the moment I did it, she realized. And I went to the toilet just now. I opened the tap just to wash my hand. If you see how the thing gushed out, these are things that we, even in our designs, a wash hand basin, just enough water to wash your hand. You don't have to run so fast and be so filled, and you waste so much. If you wash your hand there, by the time you finish washing, you must have used 2 or 3 bowls of water just to wash hand. Those faucets can be valved such that it just drops a little and you wash your hand, and that will be nice. That goes into design. Then, as individuals, there are things as experts that we are exposed to. For example, in Ekiti State, the Ministry of Environment, sometimes I was asked to vet an EIA report. And when I saw that report, there was a particular component that was not there. They wanted to build a petrochemical company somewhere. And they did the EIA. I was to vet. So I said, look, this is purely aesthetics. There are some things that are not here. So I recommended that be done. And they returned the report to the company that wanted to do that. And apparently I was given the contract, not known to the company now. You were the one that identified, can you solve this problem for them? They said they are not aware. Can you do it as a third party? And we interacted. When I did the investigation, the report was negative. With that aspect alone, I wouldn't know whether other experts did justice to their part of the investigation. But from my own side, which was quite important, I realized that this is negative. You can't go ahead with this construction. And the next thing I got was for them to want to give me 10 times just to ensure that I did some things. And I looked at, I'm a teacher, I know how much I earn, and I had to stand in between my dignity, my integrity, and my honor. And I rejected till now, that place has not been. So if individuals have that awareness, I wouldn't know if I pass this. Maybe sometimes it's a relative that will be involved. And I will weep and say, wow, if had I known, if I hadn't allowed this to go on, maybe I wouldn't have been a victim of this. And if we have such awareness about these issues we talk about, then we'll have a safer Nigeria and a net zero Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we give a round of applause to our panelists and then to us, the audience as well? I'm sure we've getting so many insights from all that has been said. And then you mentioned something about using water efficient faucets. That's the aim of the EDGE certification. So for those of us that worked on EDGE certified projects, you know that the specification is actually to ensure that the buildings are energy efficient, water efficient, and material efficient. So it focuses on 3 main pillars to ensure that the building is actually green. So in summary, it would be very good that we continue this conversation, talk to our colleagues, talk to our family. I mean, many of us have been doing it for God knows how many years. I've been doing a lot of recycling and also initiatives in the office. So we can just go a bit further to get involved, if possible, with government. We don't necessarily have to work with government, but if we see initiatives like this, I'm sure they were invited, but we really don't have to get to the top level. We could get maybe some of their workers, which I believe they probably are in other room, but keep the conversation going. And in some areas, maybe just volunteer as well. Just organize a sensitization session, and if there are prints or if there are emails that can be shared with them, I'm sure it will go a long way. So once again, I want to say a very big thank you to our panelists and you, the audience, that made this session a very robust one. Thank you so very much. So just before we go, we just have a quick photo session. Thank you. So the two panelists first and myself. Okay. Please,